Have a word with the former Chelsea winger Pat Nevin. Pat, good afternoon. I know no one's worth £106.8 million, but in the context of the modern market, is Fernandez worth that?
Who knows? And we will find out. Certainly won't be worth it in his first game if he plays at Fulham. But, you know, it's a very long contract, like a lot of the other young players that Chelsea have brought in. And it's whether he is worth it over that period of time, you know. So it's 100 odd million, but you divide that into the years that he's going to be there. And I'm not saying it sounds sensible, but, you know, you understand the thinking behind it at that point in time. But it's still a risk. You know, even with that sort of money, it's still a risk. But just as we were saying there, he's won the World Cup. He's a young player of the World Cup. He actually comes and sits in a position which Chelsea needed to fill, because Jorginho had, in my opinion, been brilliant in that position for a long time, but it wasn't going to last that much longer there. So they had to fill that position. And what it does is it sits really well with the other buys that Chelsea have made over the last while. They've spent a hell of a lot of money. And I was quite interested to see what we're saying there about the possible scattergun approach. I have to say, I held with that view up until about 2 weeks ago. And I'm beginning to feel a bit silly now, because I don't think it is. I think it looked that way right at the start. Obviously, you know, in the early days, they needed players in. They hadn't bought anyone for a long time or got anyone. Obviously, they were under sanctions. They needed players in quite quickly. And I think there was a touch of scattergun involved there. Don't think it's there anymore. I think if you look at the young players that are coming into that squad, that's very obviously building for a future.
Has he not got too many first-team players, though?
There's a lot of managers that would love that problem, wouldn't they? Yes, he has, absolutely. But Graham Potter has to find a way of knowing what are his players, the ones that are going to go forward with him, the ones that I suspect he'll want to mould into an image of a team that he sees as his team. And in the fact that you can't get rid of all the players you want to in one go, it's not easy. And some of them are on incredible contracts, and it just might not suit that Graham Potter thinks, right, okay, they're good players, but they're not for me now. I'm maybe going in a different direction. So that's the difficulty you get with the very big clubs, and particularly Chelsea more than anywhere else. Graham will understand that. But I think he'll have talked to owners before he come in about that, saying, look, if you're going to do it my way, you're going to have to come with me. And you're going to have to accept there's going to be difficulties along the way. And one of those difficulties is going to have an unwieldy squad for a period of time. And that creates its own problems, just as we were saying in the report there. You know, the personalities in there. Some people are going to be falling out with each other. And, you know, a lot of people are not going to get a game. A lot of very good players are not even going to be in the squad. And that's not going to be easy. But he's going to have to be able to deal with it. And he's going to have to be able to sort that out, I suspect, mostly over the summer.
Yeah, in the meantime, am I fair to suggest that he's facing a problem in terms of these numbers, in terms of the bloated squad, that no manager's ever had to face before in this country?
Yeah, I think you could argue that. But again, there are worse problems. I mean, there's teams down at the bottom of the division are saying, can I have that problem, please? So it's, you know, yes, it is a difficulty, but in terms of difficulties that you've got, it's one of the better ones to have a hell of a lot of good players there and an awful lot of choice to make. Now, he's not going to have that choice all the time, because you have to make decisions of who can play in Europe, etc. You'll not have a limited squad you can take forward for that. So he's going to have really difficult decisions to make there. There's going to be a lot of noses put out of joint. But that's the deal with football. That's the deal with top football clubs. You know, the very, very top ones understand that they will have some players that will be upset because they're not playing, because they would be probably playing with just about any other team in the league. Well, certainly the vast majority of teams in the league. So that's something you have to deal with. And in time, you'll have to explain to people, look, good player, nothing wrong. Just you're not fitting into what I'm doing at the moment. And it's up to you to try and help find a way out of this, which means moving on. And that's the deal. It's no different from any other club. It's just a bigger volume.
What do your instincts tell you, Pat, about which players might be struggling to have a future at Chelsea? Players maybe that we've got quite used to seeing in a blue shirt.
Yeah, I mean, if you look a little bit further forward, I mean, it's almost unthinkable a little while ago to say players like N'Golo Kante. You know, I mean, you know, is he going to be there next season? He's not played as many games. You know, he's been very, you know, injured quite a lot of the time. It's a big wage bill. Very terrible to see him go, because he's been one of the great players in the world. But he may well be one of them, because if Graham Potter's looking at younger, looking at the energy levels and being available every week, he might need to think of that. But he might not. He might think N'Golo comes back and is the best he's back to his best ever self. You don't actually know yet, but if you look at that forward to attacking area, that's going to be a tough place to get a game for Chelsea. So if you've got the likes of Raheem Sterling and Pulisic, Ziyech back on the board again, a whole bunch of them, that are there. But he's also brought in João Felix, short term at the moment, but might turn out long term. And of course, Mudryk for the guts of 90 million quid. There's a lot of players playing in that position just off the front. I would actually add Kai Havertz onto that as well. I suspect he'll be one of the ones that stays, because people do tend to forget he's been asked to play centre forward. He's not centre forward. He is only 23. He fits in nicely with the model that Graham Potter's building about young players that he can mould in his own shape. So, yeah, there's too many players in that sort of area. And certainly some of them will have to make a decision on their futures going forward.
I'll tell you what, Pat, with every name you said there, I was thinking, goodness me, there's him as well. And, I've forgotten him.
There's loads.
Kaveh Solokol standing by in a moment to tell us about how that Ziyech deal collapsed. It just complicates the area for Graham Potter. Pat, just let's have a look at these pictures just into us from Farnborough Airport, which is the arrival of the flight from Lisbon that's brought the world record signing Enzo Fernandez into this country. It's about a 40-minute drive, even at this time of day, from Farnborough up to Cobham and the Chelsea training base. And as Jamie Weir was saying, all the usual media duties, no doubt, to perform. But our cameras were there to see him land. He wasn't piloting the plane, as far as we know. He's good, but he's not that good. But there is the arrival. First pictures for you on Sky Sports News of Fernandez arriving. While we watch it taxiing to a halt, Pat, just go back to something I think you were hinting at before. They've got all sorts of players who can play off the front man, but there is no front man to play off still.
Yeah, well, there's Broja, who obviously is injured just now, could do it. And Kunku was talked about quite a bit. And you never know in time, he may be a player that turns up as well. And it may well be that, Graham Potter's looked at it. Remember, Manchester City managed to win the league with that front line.
Yeah.
So it's doable. But I think what the mistake that people made are making is thinking, right, will Chelsea have to go and win the league next season or the Champions League? It's not like that. I'm convinced it's not like that. This is a building for the future. This is a complete and utter revamp, but not a revamp that, in the Roman Abramovich way, he would bring in your Didier Drogba's, or who didn't actually work right away, but a number of players who you think massive names, huge fee, no sell-on fee, by the way, in the end, because they were of that age, were at the peak of their careers. And it's just, I think, that Todd Boehly and his group have decided, no, that's not the way they want to go. They want to build something completely new and an image that they think is the way to go ahead. It's very interesting. I will say at this point in time, and don't for a second think I'm a cheerleader for Chelsea here just now. I see the fear that some fans have and understand it completely, because this is massively dangerous. You're buying a whole bunch of young players. Now, they're all very good, but let's be honest, how many players have you known over the years that are absolute stick-ons in Spain or Italy or whatever, then come to the Premier League and it just doesn't happen, or certainly doesn't happen to the level that was expected? There have been a whole load of those players, and a lot of them at Chelsea Football Club. So you've got that danger that might happen, and then you've got them on 6, 7, 8 year contracts. This is high risk. This is very high risk what Chelsea are doing. Having said that, Chelsea fans must be thinking it's also brilliant, because if some of them don't work in the short term, well, that big squad you were talking about, well, you just turn back to them and ask some of them to do it for a period of time as well. They're very, very fortunate. Chelsea as a club and fans and people who follow the club are unbelievably fortunate that, they're falling into another ownership that's willing to spend that incredible amount of money up front to try and put Chelsea back on to roughly the kind of where they were before, up in the top 4 at the very least, and challenge for European competitions. But it may take a wee while.
Yeah, it's thrilling and terrifying at the same time, isn't it? I hear what you're saying. And I'm taking it, Pat, from what you're saying to me, that you do believe what Graham Potter has reassured us all along, that so long as it isn't a disastrous end to the season, they will stick with him, stick with the plan that you were talking about, even if they're not in the Champions League for 23-24.
Nothing's certain, but I think it's true. I do think it's true. I mean, look, you can't back up. Well, you can, but it's unusual to back a manager to this level and then say after a few months, "Oh no, we've had enough of you." Who are they going to bring in? Who is known for moulding a group more than him. There's not that many around that like that. There's a lot of guns for hire out there, big name managers. But are they the ones that are going to go and have this holistic approach that Ted Bowley and Clay Water are talking about? I'm not sure. That man there looks to me like the perfect man for the job going forward. So, football is not known, and particularly Chelsea Football Club is not known for having, I was going to say a lot of patience. Let's change that. Any patience whatsoever with managers. But that's the old Chelsea. It may well be that this current Chelsea is different. And I would say one other thing. I mean, you stand away a little bit from, the finance, which is the big story. You understand that, the fact that it is high risk, all that sort of thing. There's also a bit that has to remember one other very important thing in football. Boy, there's some exciting players coming in there. I mean, like Enzo himself is a very good player, but Mudryk, I mean, he's up there with the players you'd have wanted among all other players in the world, what I've seen of them beforehand, to go and play for your football team. João Felix had a good, 58 minutes? He's another one that's so interesting as a player. So you get the likes of Reece James, who's a world-class player, back, and adding these other ones who may or may not be at that standard. It's very, very exciting for the simplest thing in the world, the football fan wanting to watch good football and be entertained.
Yeah, fascinating. I could talk to you all hour, Pat, about Chelsea, but I'd never get to Tom Brady and the England cricket, all the rest of it. But before you go, quick word on, in a way, the complete opposite at the moment, Everton, who brought in nobody during the January window, your old club. To use your phrase, is Sean Dyche the perfect man to do the job that's now required, and in this case, keep Everton up?
I think you might need more than perfect for Everton at the moment, the difficulty they've got. And the simplest terms, I was in Newcastle last night and Anthony Gordon's walking on, and nothing has replaced him except that man there. And he's come in, and although he's almost the polar opposite of, Bielsa, short term, getting people organised, structuring a team, getting the best out of people, I don't actually know if there is anyone better. And I'm sitting here thinking, as someone who has got a real deep feeling for Everton Football Club, I am delighted to see him at Finch Farm.
But what will it now take to turn this club around and looking at the overall picture? Because it's perfectly clear that lots of players who were approached did not want to come and play for Everton Football Club at the moment. Yeah,
no, to be honest, that is a big question. And Tom Brady wouldn't get a look in if we had to get through that one. So there's far, far too much to talk about in that one. Everton actually can't think about that at the moment. Well, they can think and they can plan, but they can't do anything about it. This is survival, and everybody knows it. They need to stay in the Premier League and see if they have a plan in place from the summer onwards. But everything else is secondary. Looking at the table, looks terrible, but there's 7 clubs down there. It's not impossible to get out of it.
Pat, very grateful for your time. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.